In the pre-dawn hours of feudal Japan, when the first light of sunrise painted Mount Fuji's peaks in delicate pink, the samurai warrior completed what modern neuroscience now recognizes as perhaps the most mentally restorative sleep ritual in human history. While we in the 21st century battle chronic fatigue, anxiety-driven insomnia, and the mental fog of poor sleep quality, the warrior class of Japan during the Edo period, 1603–1868, experienced a relationship with sleep that was profoundly different and arguably superior to our own. The notion that people from a culture often characterized by rigid discipline and constant readiness for battle might have enjoyed exceptional sleep quality may seem paradoxical, yet the evidence suggests that the environmental conditions, cultural practices, and philosophical frameworks of samurai Japan created a perfect storm of circumstances conducive to both physical restoration and mental clarity. From their natural daily rhythms to their sleeping environments, from their meditation practices to their philosophical approach to consciousness, the samurai embodied sleep practices that modern sleep scientists and neuroscientists now desperately recommend to their exhausted patients. Archaeological findings from historical sites across Japan, combined with extensive documentation from period texts, training manuals, and personal diaries, reveal a warrior culture whose sleep patterns were deeply integrated with mental discipline and spiritual practice. Unlike our modern struggle with racing thoughts and anxiety-driven sleep disorders, the samurai developed sophisticated techniques for achieving what they called mushin, a state of no mind, that facilitated both immediate sleep onset and profound mental restoration. This exploration delves into the multifaceted reasons why samurai sleep practices may have been the most mentally restorative in human history. We will examine how their meditation-based sleep preparation created optimal conditions for memory consolidation, how their physical sleeping environments promoted neurological recovery, and how their philosophical approach to consciousness itself transformed their relationship with. By understanding the sleep practices of the samurai, we gain not only historical insight, but potentially revolutionary techniques for improving our own troubled relationship with mental rest in the modern world. As we journey through the sleeping habits of feudal Japan's warrior class, we will meet figures like Takeshi, a samurai retainer whose evening meditation ritual in his Kyoto residence reveals much about Japanese sleep preparation, and Miyamoto, a traveling warrior whose portable sleep practices adapted Zen principles to maintain mental clarity, regardless of circumstance. Through these historically grounded examples, we can glimpse the lived experience of sleep during this fascinating period of human history. The evidence suggests a provocative conclusion. Despite their reputation as fierce warriors living under constant threat of death, the samurai of feudal Japan may have been among the most mentally rested humans in history, a quality that perhaps contributed to their remarkable achievements in martial arts, poetry, philosophy, and governance. As we shall see, when it comes to the mental aspects of sleep, we modern humans have much to learn from these Japanese warriors. The modern world's obsession with sleep quantity, 8 hours, sleep tracking, and physical comfort, represents a fundamental misunderstanding of what truly restorative sleep requires. While Western culture focuses primarily on the physical aspects of rest, the samurai understood that the quality of mental rest determined the quality of physical restoration. Archaeological evidence and historical documents suggest that the samurai developed what sleep historians now call preparatory consciousness training, a sophisticated approach to mental preparation that may have been far more effective than our modern sleep hygiene practice. The Japanese language itself provides clues to this sophisticated approach to sleep. Historical texts frequently mention kokoro wa jati suru, emptying the heart-mind, and shinpai wa suturu, discarding worries, as essential evening practices. While these terms appear consistently in samurai training manuals, They represent more than simple relaxation techniques. They describe a systematic approach to consciousness that modern neuroscience is only beginning to understand. In the Hagakure, written by Yamamoto Tsunetomo in the early 18th century, specific sleep preparation techniques are described. Each night, a samurai must die to the day's concerns and be reborn to clarity upon waking. Similarly, in the Gori no Sho, Book of Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi describes evening practices designed to achieve Nemusu no Kokoro, mind like water, a state of mental clarity that facilitated both immediate sleep and enhanced morning alertness. Archaeological evidence from samurai residences supports these textual accounts. Excavations at preserved samurai compounds in Kanazawa and Takayama reveal sleeping quarters designed specifically to support mental preparation ritual. These rooms, called Shizukana Hiya, quiet rooms, featured specific architectural elements that promoted mental stillness, controlled lighting, sound dampening materials, and carefully positioned meditation areas. Based on historical evidence and our understanding of their daily routines, a typical samurai sleep preparation likely followed this pattern. As the sun began to set, particularly during the structured routine of castle life, the samurai would begin the transition from active consciousness to rest consciousness. This wasn't simply a matter of becoming tired, but rather a deliberate mental process that could take 1-2 hours to complete. The evening would begin with mokuso, quiet sitting, a form of meditation specifically designed to process the day's experiences and clear mental residue. This practice, lasting 15 to 30 minutes, served multiple purposes: reviewing the day's actions for learning, releasing emotional tensions, and beginning the transition to mental stillness. Following this initial clearing, the samurai would engage in kyudo, the way of the bow, or shodo, calligraphy, ritualized practices that required complete mental focus on the present moment. These activities, modern researchers now understand, activated the parasympathetic nervous system and began the production of sleep-promoting neurotransmitters. Consider Hayashi Matashiro, a mid-ranking samurai from the Sendai domain, whose personal diary preserved in the Tohoku University archives details his nightly routine. After his evening meal and administrative duties, Hayashi would spend 30 minutes in seated meditation, followed by calligraphy practice focusing on a single kanji character for 20 minutes. He would then perform a brief weapons inspection ritual, not for practical purposes, but as a mindfulness practice that brought complete attention to each tool and its condition. Modern neuroscience has begun to recognize that the mind state during the transition to sleep profoundly affects the quality of rest achieved. Research published in the journal Nature Neuroscience has found that mental preparation techniques similar to those used by samurai activate the default mode network in the brain, a system responsible for memory consolidation and emotional processing during sleep. The samurai practice of mental death and rebirth each evening aligns perfectly with what neuroscientists now understand about the brain's need to process daily experiences during sleep. By consciously reviewing and then releasing the day's events, the samurai essentially pre-organized their mental material for optimal processing during rest. Additionally, the focus on achieving mushin, no mind, before sleep created ideal conditions for the brain's glymphatic system, the neural waste removal system that functions most effectively during deep sleep states. Research by Dr. Micah Nittergaard at the University of Rochester found that the brain's cleaning system is 60% more active during sleep, but this activity is enhanced when the transition to sleep occurs from a state of mental quietude rather than agitation. For samurai living under the constant psychological pressure of potential death, this mental preparation would have been particularly crucial. The ability to achieve mental stillness despite external circumstances was not merely a luxury but a survival skill that enhanced both sleep quality and next-day performance. The extreme seasonal variations in Japan's climate, created significant adaptations in samurai sleep preparation practices. During the long winter months, when darkness came early and lasted long, the mental preparation period would extend accordingly. Historical documents describe elaborate tea ceremonies conducted in near darkness, designed to slow the mind and prepare for extended rest periods. The Bushido Shoshinshu contains detailed instructions for adapting mental preparation to seasonal changes. In winter, the mind must be cooled like the air. In summer, it must be stilled like deep water. This suggests a sophisticated understanding of how environmental conditions affected mental states and required different approaches to sleep preparation. During summer, when the heat made physical rest challenging, samurai developed techniques for achieving mental coolness regardless of body temperature. The practice of koku, empty sky meditation, involved visualizing cool mountain scenes, while physically experiencing heat, effectively training the mind to remain calm despite physical discomfort, a skill that enhanced sleep quality even in challenging conditions. Like many pre-industrial cultures, the samurai often practiced segmented sleep, but their midnight waking periods were characterized by specific mental disciplines rather than practical tasks. Historical accounts describe various consciousness practices conducted during these quiet hours. The performance of martial arts forms in complete silence and near darkness, focusing entirely on internal awareness rather than external movement. This practice, called yami no kata, forms in darkness, was designed to maintain the connection between body and mind during rest periods. The creation of haiku or other short poems during midnight hours was considered a form of mental discipline. The constraint of working within traditional forms while expressing genuine insight required a particular type of focused awareness that supported the continuation of restorative mental states. Military leaders would use midnight waking periods to mentally rehearse battle scenarios, not in an anxious or stimulating way, but as a form of controlled mental exercise that maintained cognitive sharpness while preserving the restful state. Brief periods of connecting with the memory of deceased teachers or ancestors, conducted as a form of spiritual practice that maintained cultural continuity while providing psychological comfort. Take the example of Watanabe, a samurai advisor whose midnight practices are detailed in letters to his son. During his midnight waking period, he would spend 20 minutes in silent standing meditation, followed by the mental composition of a haiku about the current season, and conclude with 10 minutes of visualization involving his deceased swordmaster's teachings. These practices maintained mental discipline while preserving the conditions for returning to deep sleep. Perhaps no factor contributed more significantly to the quality of samurai sleep than their sophisticated understanding of environmental psychology, how physical spaces affect mental states. While modern bedrooms often overstimulate the senses with bright colors, electronic devices, and cluttered surfaces, samurai sleeping quarters were designed according to principles that modern environmental psychology now recognizes as optimal for mental relaxation and cognitive restoration. The Japanese concept of ma, often translated as negative space or interval, played a crucial role in samurai sleeping environments. Unlike Western approaches that fill spaces with furniture and decoration, Japanese sleeping quarters emphasized emptiness as a positive force that allowed the mind to naturally settle into stillness. Archaeological evidence from preserved samurai residences reveals sleeping quarters characterized by extreme simplicity. At the Nomura samurai residence in Kanazawa, the sleeping room measures just 4.5 tatami mats, approximately 9 square meters, and contains virtually no permanent furniture beyond the wooden platform for the futon. The walls are bare except for a single hanging scroll, changed seasonally, and a small alcove containing minimal decorative elements. This emptiness was not due to poverty or lack of resources. Many samurai families possessed considerable wealth. Rather, it reflected a sophisticated understanding of how visual complexity affects mental states. Modern research in environmental psychology confirms that cluttered visual environments increase cortisol production and interfere with the brain's ability to achieve restful states. Samurai sleeping arrangements followed specific principles derived from both indigenous Japanese beliefs and imported Chinese geomancy. The positioning of sleeping areas within the home was carefully calculated to align with natural forces that were believed to enhance mental restoration. Historical documents describe the importance of ketsuho, auspicious directions, in bedroom placement. The head of the sleeping area was typically positioned toward the north or northeast, directions associated with stability and introspection in Japanese cosmology. While modern science doesn't support the mystical aspects of these beliefs, recent research has found that sleeping with the head pointing north may actually align with the Earth's magnetic field in ways that enhance sleep quality. The samurai practice of Shintai Chowa, body-mind harmony through positioning, involved not just the direction of sleep, but the relationship between the sleeping area and other elements of the home. Windows were positioned to allow the first light of dawn to gently wake the sleeper, but could be completely darkened for deep sleep. The sleeping area was elevated slightly above the rest of the floor, creating both practical and psychological separation from daily activity. Consider the residence of Kobayashi, a samurai administrator whose home in Edo, modern Tokyo, has been partially reconstructed based on archaeological evidence. His sleeping quarters were positioned in the northwest corner of the residence, with the sleeping platform oriented so that his head pointed toward the mountain where his family temple was located. This positioning served both practical purposes. The northwest corner was quietest, and psychological ones. Connection to ancestral spirits was believed to enhance peaceful sleep. The materials used in samurai sleeping environments were chosen for their effects on both physical comfort and mental state. Unlike modern synthetic materials, every surface in a samurai sleeping area was made from natural substances that supported what they called shizen no rizumu, natural rhythm. The flooring consisted of tatami mats made from rice straw and covered with woven rush. These mats provided natural insulation from ground moisture while creating a surface that was firm, yet yielding. Modern research has found that natural materials like these emit negative ions, which can enhance mood and sleep quality by increasing serotonin levels in the brain. The bedding itself, a futon mattress and coverings, was made entirely from natural fibers, cotton, silk, or hemp. These materials provided temperature regulation that synthetic fabrics cannot match, maintaining body temperature within the narrow range optimal for deep sleep. The natural fibers also avoided the static electricity buildup that can interfere with the electromagnetic field the body maintains during rest. Walls were typically made of natural wood and paper, materials that breathe and regulate humidity naturally. This prevented the stagnant air conditions that can interfere with sleep quality. The paper screens, called shoji, could be adjusted to control both light and air circulation, allowing precise environmental control without mechanical devices. Samurai sleeping quarters contained specific objects designed to facilitate the transition from active consciousness to rest consciousness. These weren't decorative items, but functional tools for mental state management. A small water basin, called mizubachi, was placed near the sleeping area for the ritual washing of hands and face before sleep. This wasn't merely for hygiene, but served as a symbolic cleansing of the day's mental residue. The act of washing with cool water activated the parasympathetic nervous system and served as a clear transition marker between day and night consciousness. A single incense burner, typically containing sandalwood or other calming scents, provided subtle aromatherapy that modern research confirms can enhance sleep quality. The scents used were chosen not for their pleasantness, but for their specific effects on mental states. Sandalwood, for example, has been found to reduce anxiety and promote the production of sleep-inducing neurotransmitters. The katana kake sword stand served a unique psychological function in the sleeping environment. By formally placing the sword in its designated position, the samurai symbolically released the day's readiness for combat and transitioned to a state of peaceful rest. This ritual, performed each night, created a clear mental boundary between the warrior's active duties and restorative sleep. Light and shadow, mastering illumination for mental rest. The samurai understanding of light's effect on mental states was remarkably sophisticated. Their sleeping environments were designed to work with natural light cycles in ways that optimized both sleep onset and morning alertness. During evening hours, illumination came primarily from candles or oil lamps, positioned to create soft, indirect light. These light sources were placed behind screens or in alcoves, creating a gentle ambient glow rather than direct illumination. This approach avoided the harsh light that can suppress melatonin production, while providing enough illumination for evening activities like reading or meditation. The Andon traditional lamp, used in sleeping quarters, was designed with a paper shade that diffused light evenly and prevented glare. The warm yellow spectrum light these lamps produced was naturally conducive to sleepiness. Unlike the blue spectrum light that interferes with circadian rhythms, morning light was equally carefully managed. The positioning of windows and the use of adjustable screens allowed the first light of dawn to gradually penetrate the sleeping area, providing a natural wake-up signal that aligned with circadian rhythm. This gradual illumination stimulated the production of cortisol at the optimal time for awakening, creating natural energy without the jarring transition of artificial alarm. Samurai sleeping environments were designed to maintain optimal temperature and air circulation through natural means. The elevated sleeping platform kept the sleeper above the coolest air that settled near the floor, while the breathable materials and adjustable screens allowed for precise temperature control. The practice of kuki no nagari, airflow, involved positioning screens and windows to create gentle air circulation that prevented stagnation without creating drafts. This approach maintained air quality throughout the night, preventing the buildup of carbon dioxide that can cause restless sleep. During different seasons, the sleeping environment could be adapted through the addition or removal of screens, the adjustment of bedding materials, and the modification of air circulation patterns. This flexibility allowed the samurai to maintain optimal sleeping conditions year-round without artificial heating or cooling systems. The transition to modern sleeping environments. The sophisticated environmental psychology of samurai sleeping quarters began to change during the Meiji Restoration in 1868, as Japan adopted Western architectural styles and technologies. The introduction of gas lighting, later electric lighting, and Western furniture gradually replaced the carefully designed sleeping environments that had supported optimal rest for centuries. By the 20th century, Japanese homes increasingly resembled Western bedrooms, with their emphasis on furniture, artificial lighting, and synthetic materials. This transition coincided with the emergence of sleep disorders in Japanese society that had been virtually unknown during the samurai period. The evidence suggests that the environmental design principles of samurai sleeping quarters contributed significantly to sleep quality superior to that experienced by most modern people. Their understanding of how physical space affects mental states, developed over centuries of refinement, created conditions for mental restoration that our contemporary sleeping environments often actively undermine. The discipline of conscious rest. One of the most revolutionary aspects of samurai sleep practices was their approach to rest as an active discipline rather than a passive state. While modern culture treats sleep as simply the absence of wakefulness, the samurai developed sophisticated techniques for consciously entering and managing rest state. This approach to what they called ishiki no kyusoka, conscious rest, may represent one of the most advanced sleep technologies ever developed. Archaeological evidence and historical documents reveal that the samurai practiced systematic techniques for transitioning from waking consciousness to sleep consciousness. This wasn't simply a matter of becoming tired and falling asleep, but rather a disciplined process of consciously shifting mental states through specific practices. The foundation of this approach was the understanding that the quality of the transition determined the quality of the rest. Historical training manuals describe the evening transition as requiring the same attention and skill as any martial art. The Bushi no Kokoro, Heart of the Warrior, a 17th century training text, states, "The warrior who cannot master the transition to rest cannot master the transition to battle." The primary technique was called Dankai Teki Ishiki Kotai, step-by-step consciousness exchange. This involved systematically releasing different layers of daily awareness through specific mental exercises. The process typically began with Karada no Kancha, body awareness, where the samurai would mentally scan their physical form, acknowledging areas of tension or discomfort and consciously releasing them. Following this physical awareness came Kokoro no Seiri, heart-mind organization, where thoughts and emotions from the day were systematically reviewed and then released. This wasn't simple relaxation but an active process of mental filing, acknowledging experiences, extracting lessons, and then consciously setting them aside for the night. The final stage was Mu no Gyotai, the state of nothingness, where the practitioner achieved a state of awareness without content, conscious but not thinking about anything specific. This state, which modern neuroscience recognizes as similar to the default mode network activation that precedes deep sleep, was the launching point for restorative rest. Breathing techniques for sleep induction. The samurai developed sophisticated breathing techniques specifically for sleep induction, practices that modern sleep medicine is only beginning to understand. These techniques, collectively called Nemuri no Kokoyu, sleep breathing, were designed to activate the parasympathetic nervous system and induce the physiological changes that promote deep rest. The primary technique was Shizukana Kokoyu, quiet breathing, which involved gradually slowing the breath rate from the normal 12-20 breaths per minute to approximately 6 to 8 breaths per minute. This was achieved not through force but through gentle extension of both inhalation and exhalation, creating a rhythm that naturally calmed the nervous system. More advanced practitioners used Kazoete Kokoyu, counting breath, where the practitioner would count backwards from 100, timing each number to a slow exhalation. This technique served multiple purposes. It occupied the conscious mind with a simple task, it maintained the slow breathing rhythm, and the backwards counting gradually reduced mental activity as the numbers decreased. The most sophisticated technique was Koku Kokoyu, empty sky breathing, where the practitioner visualized their breath as clouds dissipating in an endless sky. Each exhalation carried away tension, thoughts, and physical discomfort, while each inhalation brought stillness and space. This visualization technique effectively combined breathing control with meditation, creating optimal conditions for sleep onset. Historical accounts describe the effectiveness of these techniques. Takeda Nobuyoshi, a samurai whose personal journal survived the Edo period, wrote, "Through proper breathing, I can achieve sleep within the time it takes to count 20 breaths, even when the mind is troubled or the body uncomfortable." The practice of sleep maintenance, unlike modern approaches that focus primarily on falling asleep, the samurai developed techniques for maintaining high-quality rest throughout the night. These practices, called Nemuri no Ijiho, sleep maintenance methods, were designed to ensure that periods of natural awakening didn't disrupt the overall restorative process. When natural awakening occurred during the night, which was expected and normal, the samurai would immediately employ Sasoku Fuki, immediate return technique. Rather than allowing the mind to become active or anxious about being awake, specific mental practices would guide the consciousness back to rest states. The primary technique was Mizu no Kokoro, water mind, where any thoughts or sensations that arose during night waking were treated like reflections on water, acknowledged but not engaged with, allowed to appear and disappear naturally without creating mental ripple. This prevented the cascade of worry or planning that often prevents people from returning to sleep. Another technique was yami no miso, darkness meditation, where the practitioner would use the darkness itself as a meditation object, allowing awareness to merge with the darkness rather than fighting it or trying to see through it. This created a sense of expansiveness that was naturally conducive to sleep. The integration of dreams and conscious rest. Perhaps most remarkably, advanced samurai practitioners developed techniques for maintaining awareness during dream states, what they called yume no ishiki, dream conscious. This wasn't quite lucid dreaming as understood in modern terms, but rather a subtle awareness that continued to operate even during sleep, providing a form of consciousness that could be recalled and utilized. Historical documents describe the use of dream states for problem solving, creative insight, and even martial arts training. The Yume no Doyo, Dream Training Hall, was a concept that described the continuation of learning and practice during sleep state. Advanced practitioners reported receiving insights about strategy, technique, or philosophy through dreams that they had specifically requested before sleep. The technique for dream consciousness involved setting a specific intention before sleep, not a request for a particular dream, but rather a gentle direction for the unconscious mind to work on during rest. This was combined with morning practices for dream recall and integration, ensuring that insights gained during sleep could be applied to waking life. The samurai approach to conscious rest included specific physical practices performed in the sleeping position. These weren't exercises in the conventional sense, but rather gentle movements and positions designed to enhance the rest state while maintaining awareness. Shintai Chowa, body harmony, involved subtle adjustments to sleeping position throughout the night, not through conscious effort, but through a trained awareness of physical comfort and alignment. Practitioners would naturally adjust their position to maintain optimal circulation and spinal alignment without fully awakening. Kincho Kaiho, tension release, was a practice of systematically relaxing muscle groups while in the sleeping position, starting from the feet and moving upward through the body. This wasn't a one-time practice, but rather a technique that could be employed whenever physical tension was noticed during rest periods. The most advanced practice was Ishiki no Bunri, consciousness separation, where the practitioner learned to rest the body while maintaining a subtle awareness of the surrounding environment. This created a form of rest that was both deeply restorative and immediately responsive to any potential threats, crucial for warriors who needed to be alert to danger even while sleeping. Seasonal adaptations of conscious rest. The samurai understanding of conscious rest included sophisticated adaptations for different seasons and environmental conditions. These weren't simply adjustments to bedding or temperature, but rather modifications to the mental practices themselves based on seasonal energies and challenges. During winter months, when the body's natural energy was lower, conscious rest practices emphasized deep gathering, techniques for drawing energy inward and conserving it during the long cold night. This involved breathing practices that emphasized retention and visualization techniques that created internal warmth. Summer conscious rest focused on heat dispersion, practices for maintaining mental coolness even when physical cooling was impossible. These included breathing techniques that emphasized cooling exhalation and visualization practices involving cool mountain streams or snow-covered peaks. The spring and autumn transitions required adaptive rest, practices that helped the body and mind adjust to changing light cycles and seasonal energies. These transitional periods used conscious rest techniques to support the natural adjustments in circadian rhythms and energy level. The modern loss of conscious rest. The sophisticated approach to conscious rest that characterized samurai sleep practices largely disappeared during Japan's modernization period. The introduction of Western work schedules, Artificial lighting and modern lifestyle pressures gradually replaced the disciplined approach to rest with the passive model that characterizes contemporary sleep. Today, most people treat sleep as something that simply happens to them rather than something they actively participate in creating. The samurai understanding of rest as a skill to be developed and maintained has been almost entirely lost, replaced by dependence on external aids like medications, devices, and environmental control. The evidence suggests that the conscious rest practices of the samurai created a quality of sleep that was both more restorative and more reliable than what most modern people experience. Their approach to rest as an active discipline rather than a passive state may represent one of the most valuable lost technologies of human consciousness. The warrior's paradox. Finding peace in perpetual readiness. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of samurai sleep practices was their ability to achieve profound rest, while maintaining the psychological state of constant readiness for battle. This apparent contradiction, being simultaneously at complete peace and completely prepared for violence, represents one of the most sophisticated approaches to mental state management in human history. Modern psychology and neuroscience are only beginning to understand how the samurai achieved what they called yasuragi no senshi, the peaceful warrior state. The samurai concept of junbi sareta seijaku, prepared tranquility, fundamentally challenged the modern assumption that relaxation requires the absence of readiness. Historical documents reveal that the highest-level samurai practitioners could achieve states of complete mental stillness while maintaining the subtle awareness and physical readiness that could instantly respond to threats. This wasn't a state of anxious vigilance, the hypervigilance that modern trauma psychology recognizes as disruptive to rest. Rather, it was a state of relaxed readiness, similar to what modern sports psychology calls relaxed concentration, but extended to include both sleeping and waking states. The Gorin no Sho describes this state. The warrior's mind is like still water that perfectly reflects the moon, yet can instantly respond to the smallest ripple. This metaphor captures the essential quality of prepared tranquility, complete stillness that contains the potential for immediate action, without the tension typically associated with readiness. Archaeological evidence supports the existence of these practices. Excavations of samurai sleeping quarters often reveal weapons positioned within arm's reach of sleeping areas, but arranged in ways that suggest ritual placement rather than anxious preparation. The weapons were positioned to be immediately accessible, but in configurations that created visual harmony rather than aggressive display. The neurological achievement of dual states. Modern neuroscience is beginning to understand how the brain can maintain two seemingly contradictory states simultaneously. Research published in the Journal of Cognitive Neuroscience has identified neural mechanisms that allow for what researchers call relaxed vigilance, states where the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for rest and restoration, remains active, while the sympathetic nervous system, responsible for alertness and action, maintains a subtle baseline activation. The samurai achievement of prepared tranquility appears to have involved training these dual neural systems to operate in harmony, rather than opposition. This required sophisticated mental training that modern psychology is only beginning to develop therapeutic applications for. The key insight was that true readiness comes not from tension, but from what the samurai called shiza no junbi, natural preparation, a state where the body and mind are optimally positioned to respond without the energy expenditure of active vigilance. This natural preparation was maintained through what historical documents describe as mushin no kame, the stance of no mind, a physical and mental posture that was simultaneously completely relaxed and instantly responsive. Training techniques for prepared tranquility. The samurai developed specific training methods for achieving prepared tranquility, practices that combined physical positioning, mental discipline, and breathing technique. These methods were designed to be maintained even during sleep, creating a form of rest that was both deeply restorative and immediately responsive. The foundation practice was Zenshin no Nemuri, sleeping with remaining mind, where practitioners learned to maintain a subtle awareness of their environment while allowing the body and most of the mind to rest completely. This wasn't the light, anxious sleep of the hyper-vigilant, but rather a form of rest where a small portion of awareness remained connected to the immediate environment, while the majority of consciousness achieved deep restoration. Training for this state began with Hanzemurai half-awake practices, where students would rest in a position of readiness, while maintaining awareness of specific environmental cues, the sound of footsteps, changes in air movement, or subtle shifts in light. Gradually, practitioners learned to maintain this awareness while allowing deeper and deeper levels of rest. The physical component involved training to sleep in positions that allowed for immediate movement. This wasn't uncomfortable positioning, but rather learning to find comfort and deep rest in positions that could instantly transform into action. Historical accounts describe samurai who could move from deep sleep to full combat readiness in less than 3 seconds, without the disorientation that typically accompanies sudden awakening. The mental component involved developing what was called bunretsu ishiki, split consciousness, the ability to maintain one level of awareness for immediate environmental response, while allowing deeper levels of consciousness to achieve complete rest. This required years of training and was considered one of the highest achievements of samurai mental discipline. The sleep of the master swordsman. Historical accounts of master swordsmen reveal the most sophisticated forms of prepared tranquility. These individuals, who lived under constant threat of challenge or assassination, developed forms of rest that modern sleep science would consider impossible, achieving the deepest stages of restorative sleep while maintaining the ability to respond instantly to danger. Miyamoto Musashi, perhaps the most famous of Japanese swordsmen, describes in his writings a form of sleep where the body rests like death, while the spirit watches like a hawk. This poetic description appears to reference a genuine neurological state, where the autonomic functions associated with deep sleep operated normally, while a subtle monitoring awareness remained active. The training for this level of prepared tranquility involved what historical documents call shi no nemuri, death sleep, practices where the practitioner would achieve such complete physical stillness that they appeared to be dead while maintaining the ability to respond instantly to any disturbance. This wasn't a light doze but rather a profound rest state that provided complete restoration while preserving immediate responsiveness. Archaeological evidence from the personal quarters of known master swordsmen reveals environmental arrangements that supported this type of sleep. Rooms were arranged with multiple exit routes, weapons were positioned for instant access from sleeping positions, and even the bedding was arranged to facilitate immediate movement. Yet these arrangements were integrated into environments that were otherwise completely conducive to peaceful rest. The samurai achievement of prepared tranquility required a sophisticated understanding of psychological integration, the ability to hold opposing states in harmony rather than conflict. Modern psychology recognizes this as one of the highest forms of mental development, typically achieved only through years of therapeutic work or contemplative practice. The samurai approach to this integration was based on the concept of wa, harmony, not the harmony that comes from the absence of conflict, but the harmony that emerges from the perfect balance of opposing forces. In the context of sleep, this meant achieving rest that was both complete and prepared, peaceful and ready. Training for this integration involved meditation practices that specifically worked with paradox and contradiction. Students would be given koans, paradoxical questions related to the nature of readiness and peace, such as how does the sleeping tiger remain dangerous, or where is the sword when the warrior rests. These questions were designed to help the mind develop comfort with paradoxical states. The breakthrough typically came when students realized that true readiness doesn't require tension or active effort. The master swordsman was most dangerous when most relaxed, because relaxation allowed for the fastest, most efficient response. This realization transformed the relationship between rest and readiness from opposition to integration. Environmental supports for prepared tranquility. The physical environments where samurai slept were carefully designed to support prepared tranquility. These weren't anxious fortress-like spaces but rather environments that achieved security through harmony, rather than defensive positioning. Room layouts followed principles that provided natural security without creating a sense of siege mentality. Multiple exit routes were integrated into the architecture in ways that felt natural rather than defensive. Weapon storage was designed to be instantly accessible but visually harmonious. Even the positioning of sleeping areas was calculated to provide optimal awareness of approaches, while maintaining the peace necessary for deep rest. The use of natural materials and traditional Japanese design principles created environments that were simultaneously secure and peaceful. The psychological effect was to create spaces where the mind could rest completely while the body remained optimally positioned for response. Sound management was particularly sophisticated, with rooms designed to amplify certain types of sounds, footsteps, opening doors while dampening others, wind, distant noise. This selective acoustic environment supported the maintenance of environmental awareness during sleep without creating general disturbance. The modern impossibility and ancient wisdom. Modern lifestyle and psychology make the samurai achievement of prepared tranquility nearly impossible for contemporary people. Our environments are filled with unpredictable threats that require anxious vigilance rather than relaxed readiness. From crime that strikes randomly to economic insecurity that demands constant worry. Unlike the samurai, who faced predictable types of threats that could be prepared for through training, modern threats often require stress and anxiety rather than calm preparation. Additionally, modern work demands have separated us from the natural rhythms and physical practices that supported the development of prepared tranquility. The samurai developed these abilities through years of physical training, meditation practice, and environmental consistency that modern life rarely provides. Yet the principles underlying prepared tranquility offer valuable insights for contemporary sleep challenges. The understanding that true readiness comes from relaxation rather than tension, that peace and preparation can coexist, and that environmental design can support both security and rest remains relevant for modern application. The seasonal warrior. Adapting consciousness to natural cycles. One of the most sophisticated aspects of samurai sleep practices was their adaptation to Japan's dramatic seasonal changes. Unlike modern attempts to maintain consistent sleep schedules year-round through artificial environmental control, the samurai developed what they called Kessetsu no Ishiki, seasonal consciousness, systematic modifications to their sleep practices that aligned with natural energy cycles and optimized mental performance throughout the year. The philosophy of seasonal harmony. The samurai understanding of seasonal sleep adaptation was based on the principle of shizen to no chawa, harmony with nature, derived from both indigenous Japanese beliefs and Chinese medicine concepts imported during earlier centuries. Rather than viewing seasonal changes as obstacles to overcome, the samurai saw them as opportunities to develop different aspects of consciousness and capability. Historical documents describe 4 distinct approaches to sleep and rest, each corresponding to the major seasons and designed to work with rather than against natural energy patterns. These weren't simple adjustments to bedding or room temperature, but rather fundamental modifications to consciousness practices, sleep timing, and even dream work. The Seasonal Warrior's Manual, a 16th century text discovered in the archives of Koisan Monastery, describes the philosophy. As the cherry blossom does not struggle to bloom in winter, the warrior does not force summer consciousness in winter's heart. Each season offers its gift to those who know how to receive it. Spring, the awakening consciousness. Spring sleep practices, called Mezame no Nimuri, awakening sleep, were designed to support the natural increase in energy and activity that comes with longer daylight hours and warmer temperature. Rather than fighting the tendency toward earlier waking and increased mental activity, samurai spring practices channeled this energy toward enhanced mental clarity and physical vitality. The primary spring practice was Asai no Micho, sunrise meditation, where practitioners would time their awakening to coincide with the earliest light of dawn. This wasn't forced early rising but rather a gradual adjustment of sleep timing that allowed natural awakening to align with increasing daylight. The practice involved sleeping with eastern-facing windows slightly open, allowing the gradual increase in light to naturally adjust circadian rhythm. Spring sleep preparation involved visualization techniques focused on growth and expansion. The evening practice, called Shinmei no Kokoro, budding heart, involved imagining the day's experiences as seeds planted in the mind, ready to sprout into insights and capabilities during the night's rest. This created a sense of excited anticipation for sleep rather than the dutiful resignation that characterizes much modern bedtime preparation. Archaeological evidence from samurai residences shows seasonal modifications to sleeping areas during spring months. Screens were adjusted to allow more light penetration. Bedding was lightened to accommodate increasing temperatures, and small plantings or cut branches were placed near sleeping areas to provide the subtle fragrance of spring growth, a form of aromatherapy that modern research confirms can enhance mood and sleep quality. The spring approach to dream work involved what historical documents call yume no sodachi, dream cultivation, practices for encouraging dreams related to planning, creativity, and goal setting. Rather than simply hoping for helpful dreams, practitioners would set specific intentions before sleep, asking their unconscious minds to work on particular projects or challenges during rest periods. Summer sleep practices, perhaps the most challenging, involved maintaining mental coolness and deep rest, despite intense heat and extended daylight hours. The samurai developed sophisticated techniques for what they called Suzushi Kokoro, cool heart, states of mental tranquility that could be maintained regardless of physical comfort. The primary summer challenge was achieving adequate rest when natural sleep cues were minimal or absent. During the peak of summer, when darkness lasted only a few hours and temperatures remained uncomfortable throughout the night, traditional sleep patterns became impossible. The samurai response was to develop techniques for achieving restorative rest in multiple shorter periods rather than trying to force extended sleep. Kiru no gi jutsu, the art of afternoon rest, became crucial during summer months. This wasn't simple napping, but rather a systematic approach to achieving deep restoration during the hottest part of the day when other activities were impractical. The practice involved specific body positions that maximized cooling, breathing techniques that lowered body temperature, and visualization methods that created psychological coolness. The afternoon rest was typically taken in the coolest part of the residence, often in partially underground rooms or spaces with maximum cross-ventilation. Practitioners would lie on bare wood or bamboo surfaces, using minimal covering, and employ breathing techniques that emphasized long cooling exhalations. The mental component involved visualizing scenes of winter landscapes, mountain streams, or snow-covered peaks, a form of directed imagination that research has shown can actually lower body temperature. Evening summer practices focused on heat dispersion rather than traditional sleep preparation. The Usuzumi tradition, evening cooling practices conducted outdoors, combined physical cooling with mental preparation for whatever rest was possible during the hot night ahead. These practices often involved seated meditation near water sources, gentle movement practices designed to promote circulation without generating heat, and group activities that combined social connection with cooling strategies. Summer dream work emphasized cooling dreams, techniques for encouraging dreams involving cool, peaceful environments. Historical accounts describe samurai reporting dreams of winter battles, mountain retreats, and cool forest scenes during the hottest summer night. Whether these dreams actually provided physiological cooling or simply psychological relief, they represented a sophisticated approach to using unconscious states to manage challenging environmental conditions. Autumn, the gathering consciousness. Autumn sleep practices, called shukaku no nemori, harvest sleep, were designed to support the natural tendency toward increased introspection and preparation that comes with shortening days and cooling temperature. The samurai viewed autumn as the optimal time for consolidating the year's experiences and preparing consciousness for winter's deeper rest. The primary autumn practice was Keikin no Seri, experience organization, a systematic approach to reviewing and integrating the year's activities, lessons and insight. This wasn't simple reflection, but rather a disciplined process of extracting maximum learning from experience and organizing it for future application. The practice typically took place during the extended twilight periods of autumn, when the quality of light was considered optimal for introspective work. Autumn sleep preparation involved what historical documents call kokoro no junbi, heart preparation, practices designed to create mental and emotional readiness for winter's challenge. This included releasing regrets and disappointments from the year's failures, celebrating and integrating lessons from successes, and setting intentions for winter's contemplative period. The physical environment for autumn sleep reflected the season's gathering energy. Bedding was gradually increased to accommodate cooling temperatures, but more importantly, the sleeping area was arranged to support extended periods of rest and contemplation. Additional writing materials were placed near sleeping areas for recording insights that arose during rest periods, and the lighting was adjusted to support the longer periods of evening contemplation that autumn's extended twilight encouraged. Autumn dream work focused on integration dreams, practices for encouraging unconscious processing of the year's experience. Practitioners would specifically request dreams that would help them understand patterns in their experiences, integrate lessons learned, and prepare for winter's challenge. Historical accounts describe remarkable problem-solving dreams during autumn months, suggesting that the combination of seasonal energy and directed dream work was particularly effective. Winter, the deep consciousness. Winter sleep practices represented the culmination of the samurai seasonal approach to consciousness. Called fukai nemuri, deep sleep, winter practices were designed to take advantage of the long dark nights for profound restoration and inner development that would prepare the warrior for the coming year's challenge. The primary winter understanding was that extended darkness was not a problem to be overcome, but rather an opportunity for types of consciousness development that were impossible during other seasons. The long nights allowed for what historical documents call tamashi no tanren, soul forging, deep contemplative practices that required extended periods of quiet and darkness. Winter sleep patterns were fundamentally different from other seasons. Rather than fighting the tendency toward extended sleep periods, samurai winter practices embraced what modern sleep researchers now call natural winter sleep extension. Historical accounts describe winter sleep periods of 10-12 hours, with much of this time spent in contemplative states that were neither fully asleep nor fully awake. The Tomen no Gijutsu, hibernation arts, included practices for achieving very deep rest states that conserved energy during cold months when food was scarce and physical demands were reduced. These practices involved specific breathing techniques that slowed metabolism, body positions that conserved heat while maintaining circulation, and mental practices that achieved profound stillness. Winter dream work was considered the most important of the year. The extended darkness and deep rest states created optimal conditions for what the samurai called daiyumi, great dreams, extended dream experiences that could provide profound insights, creative solutions, and spiritual guidance. Historical accounts describe winter dreams that lasted for hours and provided complex, detailed guidance for the coming year's activities. The winter sleeping environment was designed for maximum warmth and minimum energy expenditure. Multiple layers of natural insulation created cocoon-like spaces that maintained warmth while allowing air circulation. The darkness was complete and undisturbed, creating ideal conditions for the deep consciousness states that winter practices were designed to achieve. The wisdom of seasonal adaptation. The samurai approach to seasonal consciousness adaptation represents one of the most sophisticated understandings of how natural cycles affect human performance and well-being. Rather than trying to maintain consistency throughout the year, the modern approach that often leads to seasonal depression and energy imbalances. The samurai developed practices that optimize different aspects of consciousness during different seasons. Modern research in chronobiology and seasonal psychology confirms many of the principles underlying samurai seasonal practice. Studies have shown that natural seasonal variations in sleep patterns, energy levels, and mental focus are normal and healthy, and that attempting to override these natural cycles often leads to decreased performance and well-being. The samurai understanding that each season offered unique opportunities for consciousness development, rather than presenting obstacles to overcome, provides a framework for modern seasonal adaptation that could significantly improve both sleep quality and overall mental health throughout the year. Perhaps the most valuable aspect of samurai sleep practices, and the most relevant to our modern crisis of mental fatigue, was their sophisticated approach to what they called kokoro no kaifuku, mental recovery. While contemporary sleep science focuses primarily on physical restoration, the samurai developed techniques specifically designed to restore mental clarity, emotional balance, and spiritual vitality during rest periods. The understanding of mental fatigue. The samurai recognition of mental fatigue as distinct from physical fatigue was remarkably advanced for their historical period. Historical documents distinguish between karada no tsukare, body tiredness, and kokoro no tsukare, heart-mind tiredness, with different approaches to restoration for each type of exhaustion. Kokoro no tsukare was understood to result not just from mental exertion, but from what modern psychology would recognize as emotional regulation, decision-making fatigue, and the constant vigilance required by their social position. The samurai solution was to develop sleep practices specifically designed to restore these mental resources, rather than simply hoping that physical rest would address mental exhaustion. The Mental Recovery Manual, discovered in the archives of a Zen monastery, describes the signs of different types of mental fatigue and specific sleep practices for addressing each. This level of sophistication in understanding mental states and their restoration wouldn't be matched in Western psychology until the late 20th century. Techniques for cognitive restoration. The primary technique for cognitive restoration was called Kino session, wisdom refreshment, a practice that combined specific sleep positions, breathing patterns, and visualization techniques designed to restore mental clarity and decision-making capability. The practice began with no seiso, brain cleaning, a visualization technique where practitioners imagined their mind as a cluttered room that was systematically cleaned and organized during the transition to sleep. This wasn't simple relaxation, but rather a directed mental process of acknowledging mental fatigue, releasing cognitive tension, and preparing the mind for restoration. The physical component involved sleeping positions that were believed to optimize blood flow to the brain. While the physiological basis for these beliefs may have been limited, modern research has confirmed that certain sleeping positions can indeed affect circulation and may influence the brain's ability to clear metabolic waste during sleep. The breathing component used specific rhythms designed to enhance what the samurai called ki no nagare, the flow of vital energy to the mind. These breathing patterns, maintained during the transition to sleep and resumed upon waking, created optimal conditions for mental restoration and morning clarity. Emotional restoration practices. The samurai understanding of emotional restoration was particularly sophisticated, recognizing that emotional exhaustion required different treatment than either physical or cognitive fatigue. The primary practice was kokoro no sentaku, heart washing, a systematic approach to processing and releasing emotional residue from daily experiences. The practice involved 3 stages: acknowledgement, processing, and release. During the acknowledgement stage, practitioners would mentally review the day's emotional experiences without judgment or analysis, simply noting what emotions had arisen and in response to what circumstance. The processing stage involved what historical documents call kansha to yosha, Gratitude and forgiveness, practices for extracting positive learning from difficult emotions and releasing resentment or regret that could interfere with rest. This wasn't forced positivity, but rather a disciplined approach to emotional hygiene that prevented the accumulation of unprocessed emotional material. The release stage used visualization techniques to symbolically let go of emotional burden. Common visualizations included releasing emotions like autumn leaves falling from a tree, or dissolving emotional tensions like mist disappearing in morning sunlight. These practices created a clear transition between the emotional content of the day and the restorative peace of night. Spiritual restoration and sleep. Perhaps most remarkably, the samurai developed practices for spiritual restoration during sleep, techniques for renewing what they called tamashi no chikara, soul power, through rest practices that connected them with sources of meaning and purpose, larger than individual concern. The primary practice was senzo tu no taiwa, conversation with ancestors, where practitioners would use the quiet transition to sleep for connecting with the wisdom and strength of their lineage. This wasn't superstition but rather a sophisticated psychological technique for accessing internal resources and maintaining connection with values and purposes that transcended immediate concern. Another practice was shizan tu no itai, unity with nature, where the transition to sleep was used for reconnecting with natural cycles and energy. Practitioners would mentally align themselves with seasonal energies, lunar cycles and natural rhythms, using these connections as sources of restoration that went beyond individual recovery. The most advanced practice was mu no taiken, experiencing nothingness, where sleep was used as an opportunity to experience states of consciousness beyond individual identity. These practices, similar to advanced meditation techniques, used the natural dissolution of ego boundaries that occurs during sleep transition for spiritual development and renewal. The samurai approach to mental recovery included sophisticated practices for integrating the restoration achieved during sleep into waking consciousness. Morning practices were considered as important as evening preparation for ensuring that the mental recovery achieved during sleep was available for daily activities. The primary morning practice was yoki no kakunin, dawn confirmation, where practitioners would take time immediately upon waking to assess their mental state and consciously integrate any insights or restoration achieved during sleep. This prevented the common modern experience of losing sleep-gained clarity in the rush of daily activities. Morning breathing practices were designed to maintain the mental clarity achieved during sleep while gradually increasing alertness and energy for daily activities. These practices created a bridge between the restorative states of sleep and the active states required for daily life. The integration also included practices for maintaining throughout the day the emotional balance and spiritual connection renewed during sleep. Brief meditation breaks, breathing practices, and mindfulness techniques ensured that the mental recovery achieved during sleep continued to support optimal performance throughout waking hours. The modern crisis and ancient solutions. The samurai approach to mental recovery through sleep practices addresses directly many of the challenges that characterize modern mental health crises. Our contemporary struggles with anxiety, depression, attention problems, and emotional exhaustion often stem from the lack of systematic approaches to mental restoration. The samurai understanding that mental recovery requires active techniques rather than passive that different types of mental fatigue require different restoration approaches, and that sleep can be used for spiritual and emotional renewal, as well as physical rest, offers practical solutions for modern mental health challenges. Their integration of mental recovery practices with natural cycles, their systematic approach to emotional process, and their techniques for spiritual renewal through sleep represent sophisticated technologies for mental health that modern psychology is only beginning to rediscover and validate through contemporary research. Conclusion: the timeless wisdom of conscious rest As we reach the end of our exploration into the sleep practices of feudal Japan's warrior class, we find ourselves confronting a profound irony. The very people we associate with discipline and constant readiness for battle may have understood rest more deeply than our rest-obsessed modern culture. The samurai approached sleep not as an escape from consciousness, but as its highest expression, a time when the mind could achieve states of clarity, restoration and insight unavailable during waking hours. The evidence we have examined reveals that exceptional sleep was not an accident of their historical circumstances but rather the result of sophisticated understanding and disciplined practice. From their techniques for conscious transition between waking and sleeping states, to their environmental psychology that created optimal conditions for mental restoration, to their seasonal adaptation of consciousness practices, the samurai developed what may be the most comprehensive approach to restorative rest in human history. Perhaps most remarkably, they achieved this while living under conditions of constant potential threat, a paradox that modern psychology is only beginning to understand. Their ability to maintain prepared tranquility, to find profound peace while remaining instantly ready for action, represents a level of consciousness integration that most contemporary people never experience. They discovered that true readiness comes not from anxious vigilance but from the deep clarity that emerges from properly restored consciousness. The seasonal adaptation of their sleep practices reveals an understanding of human nature that industrial civilization has largely abandoned. Rather than fighting natural cycles, they developed practices that optimized different aspects of consciousness throughout the year, creating a rhythm of mental development that aligned with environmental changes. Their winter practices for deep restoration, spring practices for awakening energy, summer techniques for maintaining clarity despite challenging conditions, and autumn methods for integrating experience, represent a sophisticated approach to consciousness development that could revolutionize modern sleep science. Most relevant to our contemporary struggles with mental health, their approach to mental recovery through sleep addressed directly the types of exhaustion that characterize modern life. Their techniques for cognitive restoration, emotional processing, and spiritual renewal during sleep periods offer practical solutions for the anxiety, depression, and mental fatigue that plague contemporary society. They understood that mental recovery requires active engagement rather than passive rest, and they developed specific practices for different types of mental exhaustion. The communal aspects of their sleep practices remind us that rest has always been fundamentally social throughout human history. Their sleeping arrangements, which provided both security and psychological comfort through the presence of trusted others, created conditions for sleep quality that our modern emphasis on privacy and individual bedrooms may actually undermine. The psychological benefits of sleeping in the presence of trusted community members, reduced anxiety, enhanced security, and deeper relaxation, represent aspects of rest that modern sleep science is only beginning to recognize and study. Their environmental psychology, which created sleeping spaces designed specifically to support mental transition and restoration, offers principles that could transform contemporary bedroom design. Their understanding of how visual simplicity, natural materials, controlled lighting, and harmonious spatial arrangement affect consciousness provides a framework for creating sleep environments that actively support restoration, rather than merely providing comfort. Perhaps most profoundly, the samurai discovery that consciousness itself could be disciplined and developed through sleep practices opens possibilities that modern sleep science has barely begun to explore. Their techniques for maintaining awareness during rest states, for using dreams as tools for problem solving and insight, and for achieving states of prepared tranquility represent advances in consciousness technology that could revolutionize our understanding of human potential. The decline of these practices during Japan's modernization period coincided with the emergence of sleep disorders and mental health challenges that had been virtually unknown during the samurai era. This correlation suggests that the sophisticated sleep technologies developed over centuries of refinement may have provided protection against the types of psychological distress that modern life commonly produces. For contemporary readers struggling with sleep difficulties, anxiety, or mental exhaustion, the samurai approach offers more than historical curiosity. It provides practical techniques that can be adapted to modern circumstances. Their breathing practices for sleep induction, their methods for processing daily experiences and emotions, their environmental design principles, and their understanding of how to achieve mental restoration through conscious rest practices remain as relevant today as they were centuries ago. The integration of their practices into modern life doesn't require adopting their entire lifestyle or worldview. The principles underlying their sleep techniques, the importance of conscious transition between states, the value of environmental psychology, the need for systematic approaches to mental restoration, and the understanding that rest is a skill to be developed rather than a passive state to be endured, can be adapted to contemporary circumstances and needs. As we face the mounting challenges of modern life, the constant stimulation of digital devices, the anxiety produced by uncertain economic and social conditions, the mental fatigue that results from information overload and decision-making exhaustion, the samurai approach to conscious rest offers both inspiration and practical guidance. Their achievement of profound peace amid conditions of constant challenge provides a model for finding restoration and clarity even in the midst of contemporary stresses. The samurai understanding that consciousness could be developed and refined through disciplined practice, that rest could be used as a tool for mental and spiritual development, and that sleep could provide not just physical restoration, but profound insight and clarity, represents one of humanity's greatest discoveries about the potential of human consciousness. Their legacy reminds us that rest is not simply the absence of activity but rather consciousness in its most refined and restorative form. In our modern quest for better sleep, perhaps we have been looking in the wrong direction, toward external aids, technological solutions, and pharmaceutical interventions rather than toward the development of consciousness itself. The samurai discovered that the highest quality rest comes not from perfect external conditions, but from properly prepared internal states. Their practices offer a path toward rest that is not dependent on circumstances, but rather emerges from disciplined development of consciousness itself. As we close this exploration, we are left with both inspiration and challenge. The inspiration comes from knowing that human beings have achieved levels of restorative rest that far exceed what most of us experienced. The challenge lies in developing the discipline and commitment necessary to cultivate these states in our own lives. The samurai path to exceptional sleep was not easy. It required years of practice, constant attention to consciousness development, and the integration of rest practices with all other aspects of life. Yet the potential rewards, mental clarity that persists throughout waking hours, emotional balance that remains stable despite external challenges, spiritual connection that provides meaning and purpose beyond individual concern, and physical vitality that emerges from truly restorative rest, suggest that the effort required for developing conscious rest practices may be among the most valuable investments we can make in our own development and well-being. The warriors of feudal Japan discovered something that our sleep-deprived, mentally exhausted modern culture desperately needs to remember: that consciousness is our most precious resource, and that learning to rest it properly may be the most important skill we can develop. Their legacy calls us to approach sleep not as a necessary interruption to productive activity but as the foundation upon which all other aspects of human flourishing depend. In the end, the samurai sleep secret was not a technique or practice, but rather an understanding, the recognition that consciousness itself is capable of far more refinement, development and restoration than most people ever imagined. Their achievement stands as both an inspiration and an invitation showing us what human rest can become, and an invitation to develop in ourselves the discipline and wisdom necessary to achieve states of restoration that can transform not just our nights, but our entire approach to consciousness, challenge and human potential. The path they discovered, from conscious preparation through disciplined rest to integrated awakening, remains open to us today. Whether we choose to walk it depends on our willingness to treat rest as seriously as they did, to invest in consciousness development with the same commitment they brought to martial training, and to recognize that in learning to rest properly, we may discover capabilities and clarity that we never knew we possessed.